That'd be awesome. People listening, it's just audio. It will be transmitted audio separately.
Okay, I think we're ready to go here. So hello, everyone, and welcome to Concordia University's fourth space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, Worth Defending, Montreal's Extraordinary Green Spaces, interviews with community groups. To help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from fourth space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands in St-Jacques, Montreal. Here at Fourth Space, we work with our university community to mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions and projects in development here at the university. We are running this event as a live stream meeting, so we welcome your comments and questions with a raised hand or via the chat if you're joining by Zoom. For those of you in the space, if you'd like to participate, just let us know by raising a hand and we'll be sure to get a microphone to you. With that, it is now my pleasure to hand it over to Professor in Communication Studies and your moderator today, Liz Miller.
Thank you so much, and welcome to all of our very special guests today. I'm Liz Miller, and I am a filmmaker and a professor in communication studies at Concordia University, and I am the communications part of this interdisciplinary student-faculty research group behind the exhibit Worth Defending, and we're here at Concordia's fourth space. So this exhibit features 4 urban green spaces, 4 sites around our city, known to some as wild spaces or terrain vague, or even wastelands. Today, we have the opportunity to speak directly to a few of the individuals who use and protect these spaces. We have 6 guests, and I'm co-hosting this with Evan Gonzalez-Florent. Evan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Thanks. Hi, everybody. So I'm a recent Concordia graduate, and I've been collecting temperature data with Professor Carly Ziter with the goal of supporting all these lovely groups with data to prove that these spaces are vital to our cities in reducing heat. So I would love to start this off with a really big question, very simple though. So for those listeners who may not know these green spaces, can you please tell us one thing that stands out, what makes it unique, and what this space means to you? So pour les personnes qui ne connaissent pas, peut-être pas ces espaces, peux-tu nous dire pourquoi ils sont spéciaux ou uniques? Et pourquoi ces espaces, et qu'est-ce que ces espaces signifient pour vous? We're going to start with Catherine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Collin of TechnoparcOiseaux. So what stands out about this space of 215 hectares, the size of Parc Mount Royal, that is situated in the borough of Saint-Laurent, is its incredible avifauna bird biodiversity. It is, for the past 10 years, annually been the highest ranking site for different bird species on the island of Montreal. So an important migratory and feeding stopover for this past year, 185 species, historically 223 species. So that's the thing that stands out. On a much more affective, emotional level, what the space means to me individually is a space of respite and calm and the kind of wellness that comes from simply having access to nature in an urban environment. And I think we'll probably hear that echoed by a lot of people.
Thank you, Catherine.
Bonjour, mon nom est Céline de Mobilisation 6600. Et cet espace est unique en fait, puisqu'il représente effectivement un accès à la nature aussi dans notre secteur, mais surtout, il vient changer cette idée industrielle qu'on a de l'Est bien souvent et qui est en train de changer. C'est un espace dans lequel les gens cohabitent et viennent à usage multiple en fait et retrouvent chacun leur propre usage et à l'intérieur d'un milieu urbain, d'avoir la chance d'avoir cet accès à la nature, à cette biodiversité, c'est unique. Et effectivement, il faut préserver ça.
Parfait.
Anaïs, peut-être tu peux se présenter seulement pour...
Oui, je m'appelle Anaïs Hood, aussi de Mobilisation 6600. Donc, nous, c'était un grand terrain vague. Il a été surnommé dans les années 90, c'était le wasteland. Tout le monde l'appelait comme ça. Et puis, à mesure que la nature reprenait ses droits un peu, c'est un nom qui perd un peu son usage parce qu'il y a rien de waste là-bas. Puis vraiment, j'aime le nom de l'exposition d'aujourd'hui. Il y a tellement de valeur à ces espaces-là, il y a tellement d'importance pour les gens. Fait que voilà, mais comme tout le monde va le dire, en fait, ce qui nous rassemble aussi, c'est que c'est des espaces verts. Fait que de comprendre leur importance, ils sont pas si uniques que ça finalement. C'est souvent des zones industrielles ou abandonnées, mais la valeur est très, très grande. Fait que
Merci
merci
beaucoup.
de nous.
Merci.
So David Gamper with Sauvons la Falaise. I'm one of the co-coordinators, we call ourselves, with Roger and another person who's here, Malcolm. This organization started about 10 years ago, and the Falaise itself is an urban forest, absolutely wonderful. For those who haven't been there, it's absolutely amazing. It has everything that you could look for in an urban oasis. In fact, for me, this is extremely important. I think needs to be preserved. The southern part of NDG lacks green spaces generally, and is not connected to the southwest at the moment, whereas it should be, because of the highway and the train tracks. So we're also looking into how that could be remedied in future. And I think the future looks good because it's public land. We're very lucky that it is publicly owned, and that in future it can be preserved and developed in a sympathetic way. I'll hand over.
Thank you.
I'll just continue on David's thoughts. Roger Joachim of Sauvons la Falaise. One of the major concerns going forward for us is that the Parc, which is a living green bridge that would connect all the disparate parts of this new park, Grand Parc, would be built in the near future. And this would connect the Falaise St-Jacques along with the Bande Verte and a new large space, which at the present time is very vague, which is called the Parc-Turco, and it should continue all the way to the parkland that adjoins the Canal de Chine. And with, as David mentioned briefly, this would be a living connection along with active transport that would connect two communities that have been separated by a 3-kilometer wall of the wall of the Falaise itself, that it'll connect these communities that have been separated for many years, going back 30, 40, 50 years, have not been connected. And looking in the very long term is that there's the dream of the Falaise to the fleuve, of actually connecting the Falaise St-Jacques right to the shoreline of the St. Lawrence River.
That's a beautiful expression. La Falaise to the fleuve.
Yeah.
My name is Josh Wolf. I'm on the board of Les Amis du Champ des Possibles. The Champ is much smaller than the other green spaces you discussed. It's just about 2 or 3 city blocks. It's on the edge of my land, the edge of the Plateau Montreal borough, below the Rosemount Van Horn overpass. It's a tiny little bit of biodiversity that rewilded itself. A former railway line spur, railway yards that was purchased by the city as a public works yard, but that never happened. And as you probably know, my land plateau has the highest density, we say, of artists and cultural people in Canada. And it was actually artists who first discovered it, and guerrilla gardeners. It became appropriated just by ordinary citizens. The previous administration of the borough had other ideas, but we were able to convince the Citizens Committee and other local people who were able to convince the borough to recognize it as a green space, not a park, but a wild space. So we have the advantage of having a co-management agreement with the borough, and our challenges are we have community input, but well, I'll get into that a little bit later. I'll talk about just about what it is for me. I live just a few blocks away, and it's like being in another world, as every green space, every wild green space reminds us that we're just one species, and the rest of the planet is full of other species that we need to remember.
Josh, that is so beautiful. And it's really wonderful to hear how each of you have different investment in these places and how they're quite different. I mean, they're green, they're urban, but each of them are situated in different parts of the city. We wanted to ask you, what do you see as some of the biggest risks to these spaces that you are, as the exhibit says, defending?
C'est une pas mal une grande question, mais selon vous, quels sont les plus grands risques pour ces espaces? On peut commencer encore avec Carly.
Sure. So for us, we have the ever-present threat of development, commercial development. We're in a somewhat curious situation of having crown land, so federal land, municipal land, and private developers. And as we know, with some of the legal hurdles to conservation on the island of Montreal, the price of developable land is quite high. So a challenge, obviously the risk that we face is the ever-present threat of development and that people will forget about this space. That's another risk, trying to keep it present in people's minds that it needs protection.
It is pretty far away from the heart of Montreal. So is that like a fear you guys have of?
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize it as far from the heart of Montreal at all. It's accessible by public transport. Anybody who wants to go, it's on bus 72, direct from du Collège or Côte Vertu. It's in the borough of Saint Laurent. It's a living laboratory for 2 CEGEPs there. So I wouldn't necessarily view it as isolated, but it is not, to the difference of the other sectors, in a residential area. And that's been a challenge because people don't often realize the space that is hiding if they're not living in the space.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine.
Les menaces, il y en a beaucoup. Il y a beaucoup de menaces. C'est c'est difficile même d'en choisir une seule. J'irai avec peut-être le manque de planification ou les grandes lacunes dans la planification. Donc, les menaces du développement suite à ça, puisqu'on laisse les promoteurs finalement développer la ville sans planification. Et puis, ça cause énormément de problèmes à tous les espaces verts. Récemment, on a perdu le boisé Assomption pour des développements de condos, alors qu'il y a des terrains à côté qui auraient pu être développés, qui n'étaient pas des espaces verts. Mais c'est plus facile de couper des arbres que d'obtenir un permis de démolition. Donc, on préfère systématiquement construire sur les espaces verts plutôt que de redonner un nouvel usage à des terrains déjà construits, abandonnés ou à des bâtiments désuets. Fait que ça, c'est un problème. Après, nous, personnellement, dans notre secteur de la ville, un de nos problèmes, c'est les développements portuaires et toute l'industrie industrialo-portuaire qui s'accompagne de ça, donc la logistique, les infrastructures de transport, la volonté de fluidifier le transport de marchandises à tout prix, sans respect pour la population résidente dans le quartier. Donc, ça, c'est aussi de nos gros enjeux. Et puis, finalement aussi, un peu comme tu disais, la responsabilité partagée d'avoir des terrains privés, d'avoir des terrains municipaux, des terrains publics privés fédéral, publics provincial. Ça fait un peu... J'aime faire référence au meme de Spider-Man, là, où il y a 5 Spider-Man qui se pointent en disant « Non, c'est toi, non, c'est toi, non, c'est toi ». Il n'y a personne qui prend la responsabilité vraiment de réfléchir à ça. Chacun se lance la patate chaude là, en espérant ne pas être celui qui l'attrape. Fait que c'est, voilà, parmi tous les enjeux.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, so David Camper again. I think the risks for the Falaise are fairly small, but we are concerned that the park on the other side of the highway will never get developed. That could be a risk, that the money is not forthcoming to do that. And the other thing is that the Dal Park, which connects the two parts, might never be built if there isn't enough funding. Maybe, Roger, you want to add something?
I would just add, maybe in a whole different direction, is that we all amongst us around this table, we could save our green spaces, but we could be losing the planet. which means that maybe these green spaces could be a catalyst for the neighborhoods that surround them, that they would move in a very definitive way towards being sustainable. And this could become a paradigm in many ways for other first world cities to do the same. I mean, we're making the biggest contribution to the changing climate of the planet, and we could make the biggest contribution to reversing it.
That's really beautiful, Roger. I know that Emma Despland, who is one of the researchers on the project, really talks about the value of these small places. And what I hear you saying is like these small places could be catalysts to get more people involved. Josh.
Ironically, our biggest challenge is the Minister of the Environment ministry, because there are decontaminate. It's we all know that the site is very contaminated because it was the railway lands for so long. And actually it started out as first it was a quarry, then it was a dump. That's the word we would use in the early 1800s, then a railway yard. So it is contaminated. The Ministry of the Environment has strict rules. We and both the borough and the city department involved is negotiating with the Minister of the Environment to figure out a way to follow the rules, but not excavate everything in the entire, because there are living plants and trees. So we hope that we'll be able to preserve the majority of the space, but we don't know yet. And discussions are ongoing.
Yeah, so it's super interesting to see the kind of specificity of the risks with these bigger issues. I'm going to turn it back to you.
And there's so many issues, like you said, it's a hot potato of just tossing this. There's so many hands at what can go wrong. There's people at every step of the way trying to take you guys down. So I would love for you guys to describe what has been one of your best tactics in protecting these spaces. Pouvez-vous décrire quelle a été une de votre tactique la plus efficace pour protéger ces espaces, s'il te plaît? Catherine.
Yeah, so I'll start with the idea of participatory, we're eschewing now this idea of citizen science for participatory or community science, and to be very evidence-driven in the data collection that we have, trying to let the facts of biodiversity speak for themselves in the perhaps idealistic hope that decision makers and different parties of interest will see the numerous status species that we have, many threatened species that are documentation of that over many years, and publicly accessible biodiversity profiles will make the argument for the protection of the space. That's been our strategy. It's unclear among, of the 4 groups represented today, the Technoparc has not yet received any funding whatsoever. And I know the Mobilisation 6600, it's only very recently that there's been actual money that's been promised for the site. And I think we're in quite similar situations in that regard. So it's somewhat of a question to me how much this biodiversity data is actually being listened to as being valuable. But that's been our strategy, to go for the participatory science-based observations and have those available to the public as proof of the ecological value of the site, irrefutable proof of the ecological value of the site.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you get this biodiversity data?
Yes, we use 2 key tools that I think many of the people listening today are probably familiar with. We use eBird because we're primarily a birdwatching organization, but we also use the application iNaturalist, which is at the disposition of everybody here. It's a non-commercial app, and it really is an act of conservation to be going out and making iNaturalist observations on any of the sites where we are. I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk more about that, but those are our two
Thank you.
tools. Sorry.
Au niveau des tactiques, il y en a plusieurs qui sont importantes, mais c'est vrai que dans les nôtres, on aime celles qui font l'occupation du territoire. Et ce territoire, on l'aime, donc on veut l'occuper. Puis on a eu un camp climat l'année dernière, au mois de juin, en 2023. Et ce qui était intéressant, c'est que ce camp climat réunissait aussi bien des chercheurs universitaires, avec un colloque qui a eu lieu en début de camp, que des familles, qu'un festival anarchiste, en fait, une diversité de populations. Et non seulement on occupait le territoire, mais en fait, on rencontrait tous les militants qui peuvent être parfois plus invisibles, mais qui, sur ce moment-là, se sont en fait réunis. Ça, c'est moi une tactique en tout cas qui m'a marqué. Il y en a plein d'autres, mais je parlerai bien du lancement de la BD aussi, mais on pourra y revenir.
Anaïs, vous avez
Ouais,
quelque
super,
chose?
ouais, allez-y.
Oui, non, mais l'occupation du territoire, c'en est une. Puis même, tu sais, de le rendre visible, même si on n'est pas là, par exemple, fait qu'on a voulu aménager certains espaces, même si c'était des terrains privés, puis on a fait, bon, par exemple, un jardin, le jardin vague. La première année, tu sais, la police du CN était là pour nous chasser du terrain. Puis la deuxième année, ils étaient comme, OK, mais vous allez finir à quelle heure de bar? Puis la troisième année, ils n'étaient pas là. Et donc, oui, fait que les jardins, un grand merci aux artistes aussi. Fait que l'installation de bannières, des messages, des sculptures qui ont été développées sur notre terrain, fait que qui est comme de manière très visible pour des gens qui connaissent peut-être pas l'enjeu ou qui vont simplement passer, qui vont vraiment attirer l'attention. Fait que l'occupation physique, mais aussi matérielle du territoire, ça c'est important. On fait vraiment beaucoup de représentation politique, mais je pense que ce que j'aime le plus, c'est d'inviter les gens. Tu sais, on est venu sur notre terrain vague avec la mairesse Plante, avec le ministre de l'Environnement Guilbeault, avec de tous les députés de tous les paliers différents. Parce que eux, quand ils regardent une carte, ils voient une zone industrielle à côté d'un port, puis à côté d'une route, mais quand ils viennent marcher sur le terrain, là, c'est différent, puis on peut commencer à avoir une meilleure discussion, vraiment. Ouais.
So one of the main topics that I hear a lot is being seen or having, like, just showing this space. For example, what have you guys done at the
Yeah,
Falaise?
I think it's a bit similar to what everybody has said already. So yes, activities, that's the key thing. It could be demonstrations, or it could be walks, nature walks, all kinds of things that involve people and actually bring them to the piece of green territory and get them involved. So we've done, for example, cleanups on the Falaise. It's rather an important activity because at one point we calculated we'd removed something like 500 tires from the Falaise.
Wow.
These had been thrown down by the garages at the top of the Falaise. And fortunately, that seems to be less of a problem now. In fact, I think what we've done is we've deterred them from doing things like that in future. Plus, the city has done some enforcement action. So, I mean, it's not all the fault of the garages at the top, but it can be also people who are just coming with a truck and just throwing things over the top. We've also been very successful, I think, with these nature activities and scientific activities. And there's, I should mention, UrbaNature Education, which is a charity now that's set itself up as for the whole of Montreal, in fact.
Can you tell us more about this UrbaNature?
In principle, yeah. It started off as being very much based on the Falaise, but now they're doing activities in other places and have recently received charitable status. And I'm a member of their board as well. So I'm very happy that this activity is really going well and getting young people involved particularly. So even young children and older young adults as well, bringing people to these areas and making them understand nature a bit better. So that's a tactic that really works, I think.
I don't think I have much to add to David's comments, or all those around the table to this point, but of course, coming upon an instance of nature in a very personal way, it makes you quite attached to a green space. And I can remember the first time I saw a Cooper's hawk following me through the woods, and all of a sudden the Falaise St-Jacques became a different place.
At the Champs des Possibles, we have quite a diversity of activities. There's a local childcare group that has activities for young children. We have, in the past, we've done bio blitzes, which is a kind of like citizen science, but a less formal thing, more for families and people of all ages to record the different species. We had a bat walk this summer. Also, Nature forest walk, but apparently the Japanese, well, unfortunately, I don't remember how to pronounce it in Japanese, but in Japanese, this idea of going into nature like as a medicinal, for medicinal purposes, it's not forest, it's nature. And so nature is probably a better expression. So we've done that with someone who was trained in Japan to give these experiences. Artists we've had dancers, a dance troupe, we've had photographers posting their images of the Champ. We're going to have a photography contest this year. So we've tried to provide a really wide range for all people with all sorts of interests to, again, remind them that nature is right there and we need to get away from our screens sometimes and get into nature.
Perfect, well said. So one of the things, so I went to the Falaise, and the first time I went, I was immediately floored because it is very wild, but you can also still hear the sounds of trains, you can hear the sounds of cars, but yet you are within this super green, beautiful space with birds singing. Can you speak a little bit? I'm curious what your guys' opinion on the attributes of it being very wild and unkept, and not like a park where you have mowed lawns and neatly made bushes and trees that are like perfect. Please, can you describe the tension between the value of the space being wild versus the value they might have as parks? Pouvez-vous parler de la tension entre la valeur d'être un espace sauvage et la valeur qu'ils ont en tant qu'un parc officiel, s'il te plaît?
So we at TechnoparcOiseaux have been encouraging decision makers to keep the site as amenable to bird habitat and biodiversity as possible. And that, yes, involves not razing over our urban forest and meadowed reverted fields and marshes to bring in industrial landscape management practices such as grass and picnic tables. But I wouldn't want that to be construed as a desire to not have human presence at the site. The interaction between the human and the natural, as everybody's evoked here, is really central and a driving force for conservation of the site. So we keep trails cleared regularly. Up until very recently, we had 3 very active bird feeders there that people could visit throughout the winter and document. And that connection that everybody's speaking to, that idea of forging a connection between the human and the natural, is really essential to the space.
La tension, en fait, elle existe, nous, dans notre projet de parc nature, c'est dans les critères administratifs qui existent déjà, municipaux ou autres, puisqu'en fait, aujourd'hui, il n'y en a pas de critères vraiment sur notre parc ou sur l'accès qu'on veut laisser libre et gratuit à tous nos usagers. Et le fait qu'il n'y en ait pas, justement, chacun y trouve son usage, le besoin qu'il a de trouver cet espace-là. Et en le rentrant dans des cases qui existent déjà sur des définitions de grands parcs ou autres, ça viendrait contrecarrer en fait l'usage que nous, on pense en faire, ou en tout cas qu'on aimerait proposer aux citoyens, qui même à l'occasion serait incohérent avec laisser la nature libre de s'évader, de s'exploser à travers de ce qu'elle est déjà. La définition des grands parcs à Montréal aurait plutôt tendance à détruire ce qui existe, enlever l'herbe. Chez nous, en tout cas, on a de la terre contaminée, donc enlever cette terre contaminée, puis ramener de la terre propre, puis faire une belle piste cyclable en béton avec un petit banc et tout ça, alors que, puis donc de créer un parc, mais on en a déjà un. La nature elle-même est en train d'en faire un qui s'auto-nettoie. C'est sûr que ça prend du temps, mais on a la possibilité d'avoir des parcs aujourd'hui d'une façon différente que certaines catégories administratives en place revendiquent. Et bon, c'est un petit peu certains projets sur lesquels on travaille, sur de la décontamination par phytoremédiation ou bioremédiation, qui sont des nouvelles façons d'approcher ces décontaminations, mais qui ne rentrent pas forcément dans les cases. Donc, on a cette tension parfois où le côté sauvage qu'on a envie de lui laisser revient en tension avec ce qui existe, en fait. Donc là, il faut repenser les nouvelles façons de décontaminer, puis les espaces verts dans les espaces urbains.
Oui. Puis c'est tout aussi la nuance entre le parc aménagé puis l'espace sauvage. Comme vous témoignez il y a un instant, là, de voir un animal, un épervier, de voir quelque chose qu'on n'aura pas l'habitude de voir ailleurs à Montréal. Nous, parfois, c'est le renard ou parfois même un lapin. Un lapin, mon garçon était tellement impressionné de voir un lapin. La joie, le bonheur, la surprise de cette rencontre-là, c'est vraiment inestimable. Puis de pouvoir offrir ça à nos enfants sans avoir besoin d'une voiture, sans devoir aller payer un camping à la CEPAC. Juste, on est dans notre ville, dans notre milieu de vie, puis on a accès à toutes sortes d'expériences. Mais vous en avez parlé aussi au champ des possibles, c'est le lion et la souris qui a une réflexion super intéressante sur le jeu libre, le jeu nature des enfants. Moi qui ai 3 enfants, ça a aussi beaucoup nourri ma réflexion de comment je les accompagne là-bas, quel genre de jeu, quel genre de risques ils peuvent prendre dans ce genre d'endroit-là. C'est fascinant, juste la distance qu'ils se permettent d'aller. Parce que c'est un grand terrain, puis il n'y en a pas de voiture. Je ne vais pas dire « Attention, au coin de la rue, regarde avant de traverser. » Non, il peut courir. Il peut courir, puis regarder dans le ciel, puis voir loin. C'est comme des expériences vraiment extraordinaires qui ne pourront pas arriver dans un parc urbain, dans un endroit aménagé, qui sont agréables aussi, que parfois on va choisir d'aller au parc aménagé. Mais l'expérience est tellement importante qu'il faut vraiment s'assurer que tous les quartiers ont accès à cette expérience-là. Tous les enfants peuvent observer une menthe religieuse ou voir un faucon. Il faut que ce soit disponible à Montréal pour tout le monde.
Exactement, oui.
Ouais.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, I think it's a bit the same. Yeah, certainly there is a balance to be struck between conserving nature and human recreation, if you like. And I think in the Falaise you can do that because there's a main path which goes through the middle, and if the humans, if you like, don't go off that path too much, then I think nature can survive on both sides. And we'd like to see that people do have the opportunity to walk there and enjoy it, but also they don't disturb nature too much. On the other hand, we've got this, luckily we have the what's called the bande verte below the Falaise itself, on the other side of a sort of ditch. And the bande verte is definitely for humans. So that's where people can go and cycle and walk, and it's so much more for humans, if you like, than the Falaise. But the Falaise is just an amazing place, and we want to keep it diverse for all kinds of flora and fauna. I guess my most amazing experience though was seeing a flock of snow bunting in a tree, and something like maybe 50 of them on their way migrating. And where else could you see that, honestly?
But correct me if I'm wrong too, you guys put a lot of effort in your park to clean up the trails and make sure that you put like logs to like guide people, right? Like you guys kind of take that.
Keeping people on the trail. Exactly. And we did have a lot of trees, sorry, just to finish. We had a lot of trees that have been downed by storms. The last thing happened was the ice storm in November. And so basically to keep the trail open, we have to cut those logs that fall across the path. But we're limiting our intervention to just that.
Okay.
Does that answer your point?
That's great.
I just add to David's comments is that we often see the Falaise St-Jacques itself as a flyway for birds moving into the inner core of the city, and we want to keep it that way as a bird. We call it a bird sanctuary, and as David mentioned again, that the bande verte is more towards aerobic activities, if you like, and then the new Parc-Nature, which is a whole nother. The third part of the new Parc-Nature is open to the discussion as to what vocation it'll follow. And there has been some discussion about maybe possibly creating a series of habitats that could be used as educational means for high school students to come and have their nature days within different habitats and learn right from the very smallest scale of microbes right up to, major trees, et cetera, or fern beds or wetlands, to get a complete further education as to what nature, the scope of nature. And then one more personal experience that I remember that I really did enjoy was, I was skiing one day along the Falaise, and a flock of crows came, a flock of about 50 were overhead landing in these trees. It was the most, another one of those experiences that attaches you to the Falaise.
Beautiful.
Our challenges in Champ des Possibles are different. The space is so small that the trails actually take up a lot of space. It's also a transit space. It connects to metro stations, to employment centers. So we have a lot of people who commute across the Champ, and some of them we found in our public consultation efforts, stopping people and talking to them. Some people aren't aware that it is a public space. It is recognized as an official green space. But the challenge is that desire lines, people are widening the trails. Also, the question of universal access, where it's a difficult thing to maintain the experience of the Champ and respond to the city's requirements of universal access. Our previous president uses a wheelchair, and we've consulted with him to come up with compromises, but officially universal access means almost 2 meters width, 1.8 meters. And so that's quite wide in a space where we want to keep the trails to a minimum. So the discussion is, does it have to be access for the Champ experience? Perhaps that can be move into the park, into the space, but not necessarily to go through it, to go into it and stop and experience it and then return. I think that's my personal solution. I'm not sure if that's what's going to happen. Someone talked about the requirements of the municipality, and that is a challenge.
I have to say, thank you, Joshua, for bringing up the complexity of what it means, access to a place, access for whom and at what cost, to nature, to all the other things that are living in this place. Since the beginning of this research, I think each of us, all of the students and professors, have been kind of in awe of the work you do. And just to go off script a little bit and honor the wildness of these spaces, we wanted to open up a space for you to ask each other questions. It's been a goal for us from the beginning to serve to create this common space between you all. So I wanted to know if anybody had a question that they wanted to bring to this discussion, something that you wanted to know more about from each other.
Or topic, anything really.
I'm happy to start. So I'll just I feel great affinity for everybody here, particularly for Mobilisation 6600, because I think we've been waging similar quests to be recognized formally by the different parties of interest. So I have one question which involves the incredible artistic engagement that you have. I saw a video that Mobilisation 6600 did of two ice skaters, this patinoire that was erected, and it was just, a couper le souffle, really this amazing moment of beauty inscribed onto this natural space. So I would be curious to hear about how those artistic efforts were galvanized. And then I would likewise nod to the Champ des Possibles for your artistic efforts. One of the first discoveries I had of the Champ des Possibles was through a small bird guide, an illustrated bird guide of the different species. It must date from several years now, but that serves as a kind of pocket guide. So both of those, just a question of how to engage or how those artistic endeavors maybe originated, and just to congratulate you for them because they're amazing.
On est vraiment chanceuse en fait, parce que on n'est pas les plus artistiques, on n'est pas très artistiques. Les militantes les plus engagées sont plutôt très dans une réflexion très politique ou une défense de l'environnement très scientifique, et on n'est pas très artistique, mais on a vraiment la chance d'avoir dans le quartier des gens qui sont touchés autant que nous par cet espace-là, puis qui n'auront pas envie de faire un travail peut-être politique ou militant ou scientifique, puis qui sont des artistes. Fait que, pour en saluer plusieurs, mais le Patin Libre, par exemple, qui est une troupe originaire d'Hochelaga, mais qui voyage partout dans le monde. Puis ils avaient lancé ça l'hiver dernier où il n'y avait pas beaucoup de neige, mais qui faisait très, très froid, comme un endroit dans Montréal où on pourrait faire une vidéo de patin. Puis là, quelqu'un avait commenté « Ah, au terrain vague », parce que c'est des flaques d'eau, en fait, qui gèlent rapidement. Et puis... avant la neige, ça devient des patinoires carrément, des patinoires improvisées. Et puis, le vidéo est magnifique. Mais il y a de l'artiste Junko Playtime aussi qui a fait aussi une œuvre à la falaise. Non, le gros dragon, la sculpture, c'est ça. Quand un artiste vient mettre sa touche quelque part, l'attention est tout de suite attirée vers cet endroit-là. Et puis nous, on peut être vraiment que reconnaissante, là. Il y a plusieurs artistes. Nous, dans le fond, on aime aussi miser là-dessus, fait inviter des chanteurs, des chanteuses, de faire des spectacles. On a Geneviève Pratt qui est là, d'ailleurs aussi, qui fait beaucoup de bannières. On a Jean-Félix qui est l'auteur de la bande dessinée Résister et fleurir, si vous voulez l'acheter. On a beaucoup d'artistes qui vivent le quartier puis qui, comme nous, aiment ces endroits-là, puis qui trouvent dans notre mobilisation une manière d'exprimer leur art, là. Fait que c'est vraiment ça qui arrive, ouais.
Puis effectivement, en fait, on s'est rendu compte que l'art n'a pas de limite. Autant on peut être attaché à un territoire ou avec des fois des critères gouvernementaux, mais l'art, en fait, ça s'exporte super bien. Effectivement, on a une BD aujourd'hui qui est rendue même en Europe et qui en fait, transfère notre message sur d'autres luttes. Donc là, ça vient chercher la convergence des luttes à travers l'art, à travers donc un roman graphique ou effectivement à travers des bannières où tout simplement tous nos chandails, nos t-shirts sont faits par un artiste aussi imprimeur, puis qui choisit ses cotons biologiques, en tout cas, puis c'est un achat local. Donc, tous ces différents arts, ça peut être des chanteurs, effectivement, qui sont locaux, mais leurs œuvres, elles, s'exportent puis transportent notre message aussi en même temps.
Et vous avez une question? Oh, Josh, Josh,
I wanted to respond, and also I
Yeah,
do have a
please,
question.
please.
I guess we're lucky, and I think that's what you're saying too. It's not like we solicited the artists, they came to us, but maybe that doesn't stop you from launching a request to artists. I think that artists are looking for new opportunities. And maybe if you put a call out there, maybe they will come. I have a question that actually I ask, so to be brief, because I'm not usually a brief person. I've been involved in community groups for 50 years, 45 years, and the gray hair on this side, the non-gray hair on that side. I'm concerned with all the groups that I'm involved in. I'm on 3 boards now. La relève, new generations. Actually, the Champ des Possibles, the board is much younger. I'm the only gray-haired one, is much younger. But then there's the challenge. You know, when I was a student, when I was a young worker, I had more free time. Because the challenge that I see is getting younger people to join, but they're busy. I know that they're busy. They're no longer, and I also experienced that with certain employers. There's no such thing as 9 to 5. You're called away for some emergency in the evenings. So the challenge I ask you is, how do I ensure La Relève, that the other groups that I'm involved in where the average age is in their 50s or 60s, what can we do to make it easier for young people to join us?
Yeah.
I think just to say something on behalf of Sauvons la Falaise, we haven't really actually done very much to generate artistic activity, but it's come to us. And the Falaise that Junko built is a very good example. Also, a few other things like some of the camps that have been held for small children. Those are artistic endeavors. And there's also someone who produced a piece of nature art in the Falaise, which was short-lived because it was the winter, but it was rather beautiful. So we really want to encourage that in future. And I think we can learn from what other people have done. It does bring people in. It creates this sort of dynamic between nature and art, which I think is really important.
You were talking about bringing in the youth and art. Well, we have the flags that we set up here behind you guys and over there too, of students, summer students that did this.
I was just going to jump in to say I would be remiss not to acknowledge artists that we do have at the Technoparc that are photographers, and this idea of nature photography, documenting the space through some just absolutely spectacular wildlife and nature photography. It remains a specialized audience, that photography, and I don't know if it is as readily accessible to the greater public. And I think that's where instances of quote unquote guerrilla art, like we see with Junko and others, are so effective.
And Catherine, since you have the mic, I mean, what are your thoughts about getting the next generation involved? The next generation that is, as Josh said, has so many obligations and are so busy. Any ideas on how you're doing that?
Yeah, so for us at the Technoparc, we're really considering the space as a living laboratory, inviting students out. I didn't plug this, but I will now. We are hosting, in conjunction with the Campus Biodiversity Network, the City Nature Challenge, le défi nature urbaine pour le Grand Montréal. And that extends to all 82 municipalities of the CMM. That's taking place on April 26th to April 29th. So a BioBlitz will be happening at the Technoparc with a variety of students leading different activities, frog walks and others. So really considering the space for students and having student engagement. I think the question of the choice of platform for communication is also important. Maybe branching out beyond, say, traditional Facebook, which has an older demographic, and moving into younger demographics for social media and communication strategies.
Yeah, we need some TikTok videos.
Or not.
Any other comments on that question or other questions that you wanted to bring to our attention?
Ben, pour répondre en tant que non-cheveux gris, là, moi, ça a été beaucoup mes congés parentaux qui m'ont permis de visiter autant les espaces et puis de m'y intéresser autant et puis d'y venir avec mes enfants aussi, donc par le jeu libre, comme je le mentionnais tantôt, donc d'en faire une activité familiale. Ça m'a vraiment permis à moi d'y aller, puis d'inviter aussi les parents de la garderie, les amis d'école à se joindre à nous. Et donc, quand on organise ces activités, c'est toujours très, très familial. Et donc, j'aime croire là, que ça crée d'elle-même la suite, la relève qui est nécessaire. Mais sinon aussi, je veux souligner à quel point c'est important d'avoir des têtes blanches dans nos mouvements parce que vous avez beaucoup de temps et ça, c'est merveilleux. Donc, si vous voulez partir un mouvement environnemental, trouvez-vous des retraités, non? Mais fait que dans le fond, tu sais, on a vraiment besoin d'être ensemble là-dedans. Puis c'est ça qui est beau aussi, peut-être dans l'esprit de communauté, qu'on n'est pas limité à nos connaissances ou de notre groupe d'âge un peu ou de notre génération. Ces milieux-là, en tout cas dans notre cas, à Hochelaga, rassemblent vraiment les gens de toutes les générations. Puis c'est vraiment quelque chose de merveilleux, là. Tu sais, d'ailleurs, ma fille a 5 ans, puis là, elle va aller visiter son amie qui a 60 ans. Fait que c'est son amie à elle, puis moi, je suis pas invitée. Mais il y a des relations qui se développent comme ça, puis je dirais vraiment que c'est grâce à l'expérience qu'on a au terrain vague. Ouais.
Just an idea for Josh's question about how to involve younger people in our organization, Sauvons la Falaise. And I think we've been trying various ways of giving certain subcommittees a sense of independence and that they work on their own when they can find the time. We have a young woman who's an ebonist, and she's making these wonderful new signs for our trailhead, our trail indications. And we're thinking about asking for the formation of a new committee that would have a on location nursery for trees on the Falaise, so that when we want to plant spruce trees, or if we want to plant oaks, we could have that, we could take them from that nursery. And this is something that a group of young people take it on as their own, make it their own project, and then they can move into the other position. You know, then they could start speaking to city officials, etc. Once they have that a base of confidence.
This is wonderful. Yeah, and it is so urgent to think about. I love the anecdote of intergenerational friendships. It's really beautiful and really necessary. And these are places where we can do that. I thought I'd ask a question of what kind of additional support would you like to see from the government, from university researchers or students, or from other community members? Like, Catherine, what kind of support do you really need? And where should it come from?
This answer can be really short and really long. The short answer is we need funding to come from the municipality and the federal government to support the site. A promise has been made since 2012 for the Parc-Nature MHM to come into effect, and no money has formally yet been designated, to the difference of everybody else here. So that's the short answer. The long answer, I think, is momentum building on the great history of community engagement that we have with the site. This has been a team effort. It's been a marathon and not a sprint. And so we need people, we need bodies out there making observations for biodiversity, but also connecting with the site and spreading the word about the value of the site. So those are our two pressing needs.
Merci. Céline et Anaïs, what kind of support do you need?
Ben, c'est sûr qu'en termes politiques, on a du support, mais on n'en aura jamais assez, certainement, surtout d'un point de vue provincial. En ce moment, c'est clair qu'on n'a pas le support le plus élevé au niveau du gouvernement provincial actuel. Après, au niveau universitaire, on est très approché, enfin, on est beaucoup regardé par des chercheurs universitaires, aussi bien montréalais, nationaux et internationaux. On avait d'ailleurs eu un regroupement au niveau d'un colloque au mois de juin sur notre camp climat l'année passée. Puis c'est vrai que chaque chercheur fait son rapport sur sa recherche. Et peut-être qu'à un moment, je trouverais ça intéressant que tous ces chercheurs se parlent, puis fassent un gros rapport d'environnement par rapport à notre lutte et à d'autres, parce qu'il y a après une grande convergence des luttes. Il y a beaucoup de points communs quand même à nos choses, à nos enjeux, mais que tous ces chercheurs, une fois que leur rapport est fait pour leur thèse ou pour leur doctorat ou pour leur aspect académique, leur objectif académique, il faut que sur le terrain, ils fassent avancer la cause. Donc, de les regrouper, peut-être à ce moment-là, viendrait encore donner un élan supplémentaire dans l'union et le volume d'informations, effectivement, qu'il y aurait à travers toutes ces recherches incroyables.
Merci. David, yeah, what kind of support do you need?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to Concordia for its support. And really, the research that's been done by Concordia students has been fantastic, and we're really grateful for that support. So that we already have and could build on that, perhaps. In terms of political support, I think we do have some in the city of Montreal. It's really good to know that this park is definitely a priority for the city. What they do need is more funding from the province, and there we are in contact with the political level to see whether that would be forthcoming, and we hope it will be, and that the new park will be realized fully. So those are the main priorities, I think, for us. You want to add anything?
I guess I'll have to admit that the Champ has been lucky. We do have funding from the borough. We also benefited from a previous Concordia project with Amy Poteete, and also collaborating with McGill. And one of our new board members was a researcher who was a student, now graduated, but a student who worked on a public outreach project that we did in collaboration with the universities. In terms of the borough, we have good contacts with elected officials, our local councillor, and with some of the civil servants, but we're trying to get, and this might be of use in the medium term, we're trying to create connections with blue-collar workers, with the horticulturalists who work there, and we also the professionals. We recently learned that there are landscape architects on the team at the borough who are doing the co-management with our space, but we don't have access to their expertise. So we're hoping to build more links on an individual level with certain employees. My dream, again, la relève, my dream is that some of those people in their free time become active members of the Champ des Possibles, les Amis de Champ des Possibles, because then you really would be able to get an even closer collaboration. So we have to network, and that's at all levels. And of course, lobbying with politicians is always important. I don't have to tell anybody that.
Just taking everything back to one of my original comments about we could be saving our green parks and losing the planet. What we need actually is, I sometimes think, is a dynamic framework for assembling a new urban lifestyle into these ideas, these new urban lifestyle ideas into actual working plans, and so that we can move into being sustainable. And this would involve a number of players, and they all have to be working on the same team. That includes faculties of universities, departments of municipal bureaucracies, citizen groups, in order to understand we need that social sensitivity of whatever we're doing. And then there's that whole panoply of design groups, such as urban planners, landscape architects, engineers. And then we need the artists for meaning, to give us meaning to what we're doing. But we have to do both at the same time. And I hopefully this is a start in that direction.
Roger, I really love your vision. And this was Evan's question, but I'm just going to frame it kind of as we come to the close of our conversation. We wanted to invite you to cast forward 5 years. What's your vision of this place that you love in 5 years? And you can be as speculative and visionary as Roger.
So for the Technoparc, it will be that 215 hectares have been formally designated as protected. The transfer of land use status has been made formally to the highest level of conservation beyond simply a green space. So we have the entire site zoned for conservation. And we have perhaps towers for observing our marshes, the status menace threatened species that we have there, and blinds for our photographers, and trails that are cleared with ready access to the population. So formal protection and a formal Parc-Nature that technically exists on paper. We do have the support municipally for that. It's just a question of it actually becoming a reality. So that's what we hope for. Yeah.
Amazing, Catherine. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dans 5 ans, c'est sûr que dans un monde idéal, on serait plus là, parce que ça veut dire qu'on n'aurait plus besoin de mobilisation pour avoir un parc nature, parce qu'il existerait déjà. Mais si on y va avec des projets de phytoremédiation ou bioremédiation, ça prendra sûrement un peu plus de temps. Mais dans un monde idéal, ce serait que notre communauté, parce que même si on gagne ou on perd certains territoires, il y a un gain qu'on a, puis qu'on aura toujours, c'est notre communauté qu'on a créée autour de ce projet-là, et que notre communauté se retrouve uniquement pour profiter de cet espace, en espérant que notre parc nature sera tellement, tellement grand que Raymond Logistique s'en ira et qu'on le dérangera assez pour qu'il soit plus très bien dans l'Est de Montréal, puis que cette vision industrielle devienne réellement notre parc. Ça, ce serait notre rêve fou dans 5 ans.
J'en rajoute un peu aussi, j'ai un rêve fou de voir ressurgir un ruisseau qui a été considéré comme un égout à ciel ouvert, qui a été canalisé puis qui a été enfoui. C'est le ruisseau de la Grande Prairie ou le ruisseau Molson, et puis qui était un très grand bassin versant dans l'Est et dont on reconnaît encore le tracé à travers la géographie des rues puis des parcs. Et donc, de connecter toutes ces affaires-là, ça m'a vraiment inspiré. Tantôt, vous parliez de la falaise au fleuve. Vraiment, je pense qu'à Montréal, on n'a pas suffisamment conscience qu'on est une île. Je pense qu'on n'a pas suffisamment accès à notre fleuve. Et nous, je veux dire, Hochelaga, Maisonneuve, on est riverains et pourtant, c'est complètement inaccessible. Donc, vraiment, là, ce serait, c'est ça, d'avoir l'accès aux berges, d'avoir la restauration de milieux aquatiques, milieux humides. Et puis, une connectivité, moi, je la vois jusqu'à la rivière des Prairies, là, et puis le ruisseau de Montigny, puis après le boisé Jean-Milot, le parc Félix-Leclerc, ça irait jusqu'au parc Maisonneuve, et puis ça viendrait dans nos boisés Steinberg, la friche ferroviaire. Fait qu'il y a tellement de connectivité à restaurer, à rétablir entre les espaces naturels, mais ça devient aussi une connectivité entre les quartiers, entre les milieux. C'est un enjeu que vous avez nommé beaucoup, c'est comment ces grosses infrastructures-là ont bloqué la connectivité entre les quartiers. Puis je pense qu'à travers nos espaces naturels, on peut rétablir ça et que ce serait le grand rêve.
I see it. Thank you. Yeah. David?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think first of all, the Parc Turco should be realized within 5 years, and hopefully the Dal Park Bridge as well. If it's not 5 years, it should be soon after, in my opinion. And then interconnections, as you just said. Vraiment, je suis d'accord avec ça. The whole Southwest should be interconnected, and green connections like that, green mobility. I think that's the future, and it's something that we could all profit from. I think less use of cars, more use of urban mobility of other sorts. So anyway, new residential quarters maybe also, but that might take longer than 5 years.
We can start the plans.
I'll just add, it's similar to the Rivière Molson. We have at the base of the Falaise St-Jacques, we used to have the river Saint-Pierre, and actually there used to be a lake, Lac aux Lutes, and I think it's a wonderful thing to have a green network in your neighborhood, but it's absolute paradise to have water, flowing waters. It would be great future.
If I can really dream, it's a part of the champ fenced off with a sign, bioremediation in progress, that the Ministry of Environment will agree not to excavate the contaminated soil. Up to now, they say, oh no, the studies, it's not feasible, it's not sufficient, but people are researching all sorts of new things, including with using mushrooms, using fungus. So I would hope that we could convince them to allow that to go forward in a long-term process. And because people are talking about streams, we don't have, our space is not large enough, but it would be nice to have, we do have seasonal water, and to have migratory ducks in the springtime, in the early spring, would be wonderful to see them.
This is really inspiring. Yeah.
It's perfect. I just want to wrap this up. This has been a very rich conversation, and I'm sure everybody here is very inspired. So what is the best way for people to get involved? Ceux qui sont vraiment inspirés avec ce qu'ils écoutent, quelle est la meilleure façon pour s'impliquer? Catherine?
Well, we have a variety of ways of getting in connection with us. So there's TechnoparcOiseaux.org, which is a website. We have a very active Facebook group with 5,500 people. If we could do anything in the short term, it would be to get out and make biodiversity observations. So I would just plead with everybody to participate in the City Nature Challenge for that BioBlitz. You can do it really anywhere, but to come to the Technoparc maybe and discover it.
Yes.
But to speak about the value of what we have called citizen science, participatory science, and just make use of those tools that are at everybody's disposition to really make those small efforts that are very impactful in shaping our biodiversity profile. So yes, thank you to everybody ahead of time if you're able to do that.
Dans l'implication, en fait, il y a plusieurs façons de le faire. C'est sûr que ça dépend aussi du temps que chacun a à y mettre. Ceux qui n'ont vraiment pas de temps, ça peut être juste en achetant nos chandails ou nos BD, parce que évidemment, des fonds, on en a besoin toujours un minimum pour faire des actions. Mais après, ça peut être aussi parce que nous, la force de notre collectif, c'est qu'on est un peu un électron libre. Donc, n'importe qui a une idée, un projet qui vient enchérir la cause de notre parc nature est le bienvenu. On met en place des soupers mensuels tous les derniers vendredis de chaque mois pour 2024. Donc là, on en a un vendredi au Chic Resto Pop. Donc vraiment pour parler, pour amener des idées, voir un peu comment justement les gens peuvent s'impliquer. Puis toujours garder en tête que il n'y a pas besoin des fois de faire des grandes choses pour s'impliquer. Des fois, chaque petit geste, chaque militant peut amener même si ce n'est qu'il croit peut-être c'est une toute petite pierre à l'édifice, mais chaque petite pierre fait des grandes choses. Puis faut pas penser qu'on peut rien faire. Alors, vraiment de venir déjà juste s'informer, nous suivre sur les réseaux sociaux. Vraiment, ça peut faire parfois une différence, puis se tenir au courant des activités. Puis en plus, on a toujours la joie de se rencontrer sur les activités. Donc, il y a plein de façons, en fait, de s'impliquer.
Yeah, I think it's more or less the same thing. And we like people to get involved as much as they possibly can, of course. And we have a Facebook page for Sauvons la Falaise and also a website, and similarly for UrbaNature. So yes, obviously everybody should try and get involved. We want to encourage that. We want to encourage young people to get involved, older people as well, people who work, who don't necessarily have very much time, but could profit from using those spaces. And especially we've got an area which is south of the railway, which has some housing which is not all that wonderful, and of course lack of green space generally in that area. So this is an opportunity for them to really enjoy nature, and more people should know about it. We hope they will take the opportunity in the future.
I would just add to David's comments that if you have an idea, get in touch with us. We're coordinators, and we try to facilitate and move ideas forward. And we have some of our members are involved with trees, some of our members are involved with invasive species, others with wildflowers, and they've taken that on themselves. And we try to facilitate as best we can in the work that they're doing. And but if you like, you can come Monday mornings at 10 o'clock at Akavan parking lot. We all get fun. We find something to do.
I don't have that much to add, except that our website is champdespossibles.org, and we're on all the socials. So we have a whole panoply of activities. So someone who has just an hour to spend to help clean up, or to take pictures and all sorts of activities. And just contact us there, and we'll figure out a way to get people involved.
The name of this exhibit is Worth Defending, and I just want to thank each and every one of you sitting at this table for doing the work you do, for doing it with such conviction, such creativity. It really means so much for us. Thank you for being here, for making the time to come together. And I also want to thank someone in particular, Ashley Levasseur, who's been the anchor for this project, for this exhibit, and especially the unbelievable team at Fourth Space who makes all of this so much fun. You've been amazing to work with, and thank you, Evan, for this conversation.
Thank you.
I want to let you end today.
So if anyone wants to find out more about the project, you can go to wastescapes.com or the Loyola Sustainability Research Center website. This podcast is a part of a research project called Enhancing Biodiversity, Social Inclusion, and Climate Resilience through Informal Urban Green Spaces. And it's supported by the Sustainable Transition Team Research Initiative from the Office of Research at Concordia, and is a part of Concordia's Sustainability Action Plan. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again to everyone for coming into Fourth Space today, for having this conversation and being a part of this exhibit. To everyone who joined us online, we're going to be going ahead and closing up the Zoom, so we thank you for joining us today. We're also going to go ahead and close up the live stream. So just a reminder that this video was live streamed to our YouTube channel, and it's already available if you'd like to revisit or share it. For those of you who are here in the space, please feel free to stick around till 6 o'clock and explore the rest of these exhibits. Okay, everyone?